Our next segment is brought to you by Engineered Tax Services, where engineering and accounting come together. Joining us via Skype is a friend of ours, Karyn Turk, host of Red America Radio, and an opinionated lady who's going to tell us all about this. Welcome, Karyn.
Hi, welcome. It's beautiful here in sunny South Florida.
It's always beautiful there. So let's talk about taxes, something you guys specialize in. So wealthy European nations like the UK and France are proposing digital taxes on large tech corporations like Facebook, Google, all those big things that, define our lives these days. Famously, they pay little to no taxes on the profits they earn around the world. So first, good idea, bad idea? What do you think about this, Karyn?
Well, the problem that we have with this is it almost seems like it's, U.S. companies that are being targeted, because when you look at these countries that want to impose these taxes, none of them really have big tech companies. They're not really in the business of big tech. So they're looking really to take a slice of the pie away from the U.S. and a slice of the pie away from these big tech companies. And in some ways, they understand what they're doing, and it makes sense what they're doing, but it's not really good for the U.S.
So previously you were talking about, though, I've talked to you about these big companies, and you said they did need to be taxed, and we need to find a way to get a fair share, and also that they had unrivaled monopoly power. So this is interesting that you're saying, oh, they're just chasing American interests. Do you think this is more the ball's in our court and we should do something about it?
Yeah, I do think the ball's in our court, and I do think we need to do something about it. We need to do it strategically, and there needs to be a better plan on how to handle it. What's happened reminds me of, and I'm going to kind of show my age a little bit, but the breakup of the Bell system. If, for those of you who remember it, if you don't remember it, your millennials should Google it. But back in the day when all of us had landlines, they had to break up these telephone monopolies, and it was something that they hadn't thought about and they hadn't seen before. We're in an environment right now with these big tech companies where this is something that we have never had before. It's unparalleled. So we have to find a way to work with them and tax them appropriately. But it's not really the Europeans' job or France's job to really get into American interests and tax them. It's up to America and the United States to come up with a plan strategically to make a way for these big tech companies to do things fairly and to be taxed fairly.
Yeah, so President Trump has announced there will be an investigation, and they're going to see if there are going to be retaliatory tariffs. Of course, we're in the middle of a trade war with China, with the EU, and also with these EU countries that are saying, hey, you know what, they should pay their fair share, but we're saying, hey, this is unfair. You're exactly right, Karyn. When you say tech companies, you might as well just label it Silicon Valley, because that's where they're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're all coming from Silicon Valley. They're all U.S. companies. And, I understand why the European Union and France want to, profit from this. It makes sense. There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of money for them to put their hands on, but that doesn't make it right. And these are U.S. companies. These are tech giants, and we have to find ways to reevaluate how we're working with them. Normally with these European unions and, other countries, we're able to get things worked out at summits, but G20 was not terribly successful when it comes to this industry. We really weren't able to come up with solutions. So we need to really strategically go back to the table and figure out how to handle it now.
Well, this is what's interesting about taxation, and this is what you do, Karyn, over there at Engineered Tax Services. A lot of these big players and a lot of the very wealthy and most powerful pay much lower taxes, and it ends up being the upper middle class, the entrepreneurs of the world, who pay all the taxes. How can we make sure that people are paying their fair share and that people like you and me aren't paying for everything?
Like I said, things definitely need to be reevaluated. This is really a bipartisan issue. And what I like about this being a bipartisan issue is we can all kind of come together. And, I say a lot on this show, we need to look at the things that unite us, not the things that divide us. And probably the only thing that I'll ever agree with Elizabeth Warren on is that the fact that these companies have grown out of control. So we need to find a new way to work with them and get a fair share of taxes from them. And that really, in turn, will help people like me and you and other people that are in tax brackets that, sometimes seem a little bit unfair, but there needs to be a restructure for sure. And these big tech companies could actually be very helpful in that restructure.
Yeah, I think it's very important also. You mentioned the Bells and whatnot. Those were broken up before I was born, Karyn, and I'm
Oh,
older than
God.
a millennial. But, you know, we have to be really careful with antitrust and taxation because we don't want to stifle business, but we want things to be fair for all Americans. Isn't that right?
We definitely do want things to be fair. And, as technology evolves, we have to evolve with it. And the old way of looking at things may just not work anymore. So we need to reevaluate how we work with these companies and how we tax these companies. And you could go back to that again. And I'm really sorry to hear that I'm so old that the Bell system was before you were born. That's a little bit upsetting. But the good news is that we did come out of that okay. Look at cell phone service now. Look at all the things that changed. And the reason that we really needed to break up the monopolies was much more than the monopoly itself. It had to do with the evolution of technology. And we're at another pinnacle point like that right now. This evolution of technologies, evolution of social media. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw this coming. And now we're here, and now we have to reevaluate it and find a way to work with it.
No, and that is one of the things that you agree with the left on, and this is a bipartisan issue. The government does have a role to play, and that role is regulation at strategic points, isn't it, Karyn?
Absolutely, 100%. It's one of the few times you'll hear me say that I'm for taxes, but I definitely am for taxes in this sense. And I'm definitely for our government getting involved and finding a way to regulate these companies that's fair. Because I also, there's a whole other issue at hand, the censoring of conservative voices. And I've talked a lot about that too. And these algorithms that they have and things that they have that we don't understand seem to be very biased. So we have to find a way to work with these companies, not only on taxes, but on our voices being heard, on free speech, and on, regulation of some sort. And I'm sort of usually anti-regulation. I'm not for big government, but these tech giants in some ways are bigger than our government right now.
Yeah, well, that's something that everyone should be afraid of. Censorship of anyone affects everyone. We all should support free speech, free markets, and freedom. Karyn, always great talking to you. All the best to all of your staff down in Palm Beach.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
And thank you for watching. We'll be back soon.